It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, I'm going to talk about empathic men. And everybody has some degree of empathy, right? I mean, even sociopaths have teeny tiny bits of empathy. I mean, it's like they understand what other people are feeling, they just don't care. And that, the opposite end of the spectrum is, autistic people who may not necessarily get what somebody's feeling, but when it's explained to them, they care very much, right? But then I work with a bunch of guys who have huge amounts of empathy. They're very aware of when people are uncomfortable, or they care very much when people are upset. And I want to talk about what the world does to these guys, because these are the sorts of topics we can do that actually do drill down on particular hardships that men's face without getting into the incel forum or MRA weeds. So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K, or ko-fi.com. I never know. Okay, so there's this thing I find, and in a way, it's like that makes no sense until when you drill down and go, no, wait, the only reason this doesn't make sense is we put women up on unnatural pedestals when it comes to emotional intelligence. Because, trust me, women do not have the market cornered on emotional intelligence. Women develop greater emotional vocabularies, but that does not mean that women are automatically better at feelings than men. What you feel and the words you have to describe your feelings, not the same thing. And so with empathic guys, they have a huge amount of data, of stimulus, of stuff coming in that they have to deal with. And because they're socialized masculine, they don't have the same training in naming and processing the feelings. Because if you can't name it, you don't know where to put it, right? Some of us can deal with abstractions, but part of the way I deal with abstractions is just, I don't need a pre-existing category. It's like, okay, there's this thing. We're going to call it Steve. Hi, Steve. How are you? I stole that from an Otter account I follow. But, we're going to call it that. And we're just going to put it in its proper place. But a lot of people need to connect it to a pre-existing concept. And, people who are highly empathic have very, very complex emotions. They can feel very raw. And they can get really caught up in the emotional states of other people. And then those people find them to be too much, or, I hear all over the place, a downer, and then they're left alone and they're crushed. And, if it gets worse than that, you get, because the narcissist empath, or, personality disorder empath, codependency is a trope for a reason. And, somebody who is just mimicking humaning is going to latch on to somebody who seems authentic that way to try to squeeze every little bit of that out of them that they can, and then they leave them and abandon them for new prey. And yes, there are a lot of women who are like this. Part of the problem with the testing for a lot of this stuff is that the early testing was done on prison populations. No, I'm not kidding. Look it up. And because it was done on prison populations, well, overwhelmingly male. And you're not, testing for teddy bear status in prison inmates. That's where they developed the psychopathy checklist and various other things. I mean, a lot of medicine that is now used with gender affirming care for trans people were tested on convicted pedophiles as chemical castration tools. Again, look it up. All these are facts. And so we have really skewed stuffs. And, then we have really, really terrible people who end up in the sciences, right? And people take the personal biographies of somebody like John Money, who did horrible things to children, and Hans Asperger, who either did horrible things to children or looked the other way with children, and we get into this big political fight about it instead of going, all right, there is a high reason to believe that the stuff these guys did is questionable. So let's retest the data. No, not using the experiments they used. And I mean, both of them primarily worked with boys. And so again, the testing for high functioning autism skews male. Autism, ADHD, everything's developed for how it displays in boys. But all these sensitivity things, the emotional aptitude tests, skewed socialized girl. So girls who are autistic but mask much better because they're getting all that, emotional education, they don't get diagnosed until much later, sometimes in adulthood. Whereas boys who have a lot, they're sensitive kids. And that's treated as a bad thing in boys, and it's not. But they're sensitive kids, and because the world goes, oh, this is weakness, let's crush it out of them, you end up with mental health issues instead of somebody being developed based on their inherent strengths. And then you get the way, even if a guy makes it through to adulthood with their empathy and their spirit intact, then they get into this misreading thing or the projection, that unwell women, and I know I'm being super heteronormative here, but yeah, unwell people, because I know gay guys or guys who are in relationships with men that had this happen to them too. So yeah, it's not just women. But I focused on women because women are supposed to understand feelings better. It's not true. Women are just taught how to fake it better. They're taught rules. And there are so many girl world rules I cannot stand. They never took with me. And I don't think it was just because my dad wanted a boy. That's a great thing to know growing up. But, and sort of socialized me that way. But everything else was pushing me in another box. And it wasn't because, even the stuff my dad hated me watching, my dad flew into a rage over Mr. Rogers. Yeah. I didn't see anything wrong with Mr. Rogers. I liked the puppets, Mr. Rogers seemed very nice. But, the stuff I was legitimately interested in was boy stuff. And so it's like the attempts to socialize me, girl, failed. But here's what I learned being a failure as a girl. There are all these rules that nobody likes, but everybody knows you're supposed to follow. Stuff like when someone says they're sorry to you, you're supposed to say, I'm sorry too. And, preferably lie about something specific you're sorry about. This has never made sense to me. Because if one girl's apologizing because they're supposed to, even when they did something wrong, but they don't think they did something wrong and they don't mean the apology, then the other girl who did nothing wrong is supposed to apologize as well, completely negating the purpose of an apology, which is take the emotional burden off of the person you wronged and put it onto you. And I would not do this. I would not do this. If I did something wrong, I would say I was sorry. I did not expect the other person to reciprocate. And if I didn't do anything wrong, you best know I didn't, falsely confess or apologize for something I did not do. And I mean, it was so bad that, my paternal aunt accused me of stealing money from her purse. I didn't do it. Somebody else did. But I would not confess to doing it. And I was 16, 17, something like that. Maybe a bit younger. But that horrid woman would not speak to me for the rest of her life because I didn't confess when I didn't do it. Even after she found out who really did it, she was more mad at me after that. She was great with the person who actually did it. She was so nice to her. But me, because I didn't play by the rules. If you think this is a fucked up story, it absolutely is. This woman was horrible. But this is an example of the expectations that are put on women and girls. Now, yes, this makes basic women and girls kind of crazy by default because this is gaslighting. But people who don't question this take this into their adult relationships. And because in many corners of the world, there's so little socializing, non-romantic socializing between men and women, men don't know how women are socialized to think, as well as, some of the sex typical differences between typical men and typical women, which is only 3 and 4 people. So, I try not to overvalue these things because in gaming, I'm pretty sure gaming attracts that other 25% of both pools. Because you get women like me, if I am in fact a woman, I don't know anymore. You get people like me, and then you get sensitive, awesome, compassionate, caring, creative, utter teddy bears in power armor of guys. And you guys are my favorite kind of guys. If all guys were like you guys, I think the world would be a better place. But the world is shit to you. Not only because it's inherently shit to you, because you don't conform to boy code, but then you go, and when girls expect boys to be a certain way, but at the same time expect boys to understand girl code. Why? I have no idea. Just because girls don't know boys are taught any differently. Boys don't know girls are taught any differently. I only know this because it was between two worlds. But it becomes a real problem in relationships. Because obvious reasons. But what happens is women who never question their socialization and are attempting to fake an emotional aptitude that they don't have because women are supposed to have it, they take it out on men and they project certain things onto the men in their lives. And that becomes a real problem for both people because that's never going to end well. And so sensitive guys, I find, get labeled a whole bunch of false things, creepy to pushy, overinvested, all that stuff, just because they are sincerely interested and care about what a woman is saying. Yes, that's how fucked up things are. No joke. And that's why you see all the dating advice being, don't overinvest, don't start long-term planning, on the first date. Now the thing is that empathic guys, they do that deep emotional connection is where those guys thrive. And you guys aren't stupid. You know that there's a chance that it won't work out, but that's your way of hoping. And so the fact that there are these rules that dictate that a certain portion of the population must go against their nature, and there's nothing, it's not that there's nothing wrong with that nature. The confusing thing is that this is what women claim they want, and women do want it, but they don't know what it looks like when they get it, because sensitive guy does not present like sensitive girl. It's not the same language. It's a penguin giving a penguin another pebble instead of the freaking grand gestures that you see in Hallmark movies. Oh my God. Like, so much behavior in those Hallmark movies gets you labeled a sex pest in real life. It's just, I understand why, I read a thing that Gen Z doesn't want as many romantic subplots in media. They want stories about men and women being friends. Can we please have those? Why does everybody have to partner off? And I would like to see more of those too. Now, of course, then you get the insane fan fiction group that, and this is confusing for guys too, because, sensitive guys know, empathic guys know they're not, and this is bullshit, guys. I'm just, empathy exercise here, ironically. Guys know that traditional guys aren't supposed to be sensitive. Now, when we say traditional guys, we're only talking the world wars onward. Because if you read any literature before that point, dudes are crying all over the place, weeping, wailing when their friends die, kissing each other, everything like that. That, to me, is tradition. This new shit, the post-war shit, the citizen soldier, is the aberration. Now, if you're a guy who doesn't cry, it's not the way you're wired, that doesn't mean you're not sensitive. It doesn't. It extra sucks if you are sensitive but don't have that physiological response, because that means, you have to get the hormone balance rebalanced in a different way, because crying produces oxytocin, which offsets things like cortisol, and so it's actually of benefit. And if you're not there, if that's not your jam, there's other things you can do. Exercise is one of them. I find hip hop's great. People don't understand it, but there are other things. But I mean, quite frankly, crying is the most efficient physiological system it's literally a flush. It's a badness flush. And so, but when guys do it, they're mocked. I mean, you guys know, I am no fan of Jordan Peterson. I do not like it when people pick on the fact that he cries for mockery. Now, I have made comments about him crying because the degree of emotional distress is not in keeping with the subject matter he's discussing. He'll be debating free speech and he'll be trembling and in tears. Like, that's something is very wrong there. I can't stand the guy, but like, compassion there. It's like, he shouldn't be doing this. He should be, getting the proper help, but physician heal thyself, right? That's the problem with psychologists who get into a mental health bind. And that's not true of all psychologists. I know plenty that are better than that, but he's that aberration masculinity that we claim is traditional masculinity, but it really ain't. So asking for help, forget it. And that's the problem for guys with a lot of empathy. You guys are taking in the correct information. But then you got people bullshitting you on what it means. Because you see people saying, we want sensitive guys. You're like, I'm a sensitive guy, great. And then you're sensitive and you get punished and mocked and demeaned and shamed for it by the very women who 20 minutes before were complaining they want sensitive guys. I see you. I hear you. I feel you. You are not imagining this. Here's what's going on. These women who are supposed to be experts at feelings, and they ain't, are having what's called empathy overload or compassion overload. They are seeing you, sensitive guy, having sincere feelings. They feel what you're feeling, compassion and empathy. But they don't have the cognitive empathy to process those feelings. And so they get overloaded and they either run away, which ain't great, or worse, they shame and say a bunch of horrible things about you to get it to stop because they can't handle it anymore. Is this completely immature behavior? Absolutely. And here's the messed up thing. All the emotional training that girls are taught, it doesn't do shit for cognitive empathy. It's a lot about compassion and empathy. But it's not about how to sit with bad feelings. It's all about how to hide the fact that you're having bad feelings. So a lot of women are walking around this close to overwhelm emotionally. And then you have a guy who listens accurately to what he's being told, expresses emotion, and she goes into, why the hell is my nose red? She goes into overwhelm and acts not great. Now, nobody acts great when they're in overwhelm, so we'll have some compassion there. This is not bashing women, obviously, but this is explaining it so you guys understand what's going on, so you know it's not you. So they get pushed into overwhelm. Guy goes, what the fuck? Like this went the exact opposite way I was told it would. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And so guys not only pack down all that emotion, so they're not being taught how to process emotion because they're told women know this stuff and women don't. There is no normative masculinity or femininity right now that actually teaches people how to process difficult feelings. Because right now, the normative feminine is fucking She-Hulk, and the normative masculine is Ezra Miller's Flash. And they are both disasters. So what do you do? Well, I mean, what I did, because, growing up, brain not being able to tell the difference between any of these categories that people talk about, I kind of caught it from both ends. Guys socially punishing me for not being appropriately feminine or seeing me as not a girl, which they may have been right. I don't know. But then girls punishing me for this is where I learned this. Okay. I never dated an official non-binary person, so I can't speak to that. But you would hope that people who reject gender norms would be better at this, but no. You've seen these communities. It's all freaking Marxist structures They teach the opposite of owning your shit and regulating your emotions. So you've got the very rare beast like me, who not only has the vocabulary to explain this shit, but has also developed the skills by sheer necessity to know how to do it. And that's not toot my own horn. I fucking wish I didn't have to get good at it. There are times I really envy people who are allowed to fall apart and have everybody go, oh, it's okay. You know, like, I would like a few extra chances. I would like a little more wiggle room. But I'm pretty sure part of that is because I don't read feminine to people. And so I get treated like a guy in these situations. So dudes, I get it. It sucks. Because what you're told you're supposed to do for other people doesn't get done for you. And so you end up in this cycle of being told you should treat everyone equally. And then you're told you should shut up, stop complaining, you have privilege. Are we supposed to treat everybody equally or not? Because if we're supposed to treat people equally, well, you've just told me everybody gets treated like shit and told to shut up about their feelings. Right? And then, unfortunately, men are trained to not actually speak in feelings. Everybody's actually trained to not speak in feelings. Like, I feel that this is not going the way I want to. Is not a feeling. I feel confused by the way this conversation has gone. Is feeling. Confused is an emotional state. That other thing was a complaint with I feel tacked onto the beginning. That's not a fucking I feel statement. And yeah, I've been talking about this a lot, but it's driving me crazy, you know? Because the more guys I work with, the more it's like, these are good guys. Like, yeah, profound struggles, but these are good guys. Like, really good guys. And yeah, there's some damage we gotta heal. They deserve that. But, you know, they're way better potential partners because they've, like me, they've had to understand the shit that's going on in their brain a lot more than that guy who got an MBA or a law degree or something else is making him a whole bunch of money, but he's standing in a room full of people being Mr. Cool and he feels absolutely alone. And then he takes it out on the people that are supposed to be the ones that are the emotional dumping ground. Because in his family of origin, men just came home all grumpy and it was all catered to, and that's not the world anymore. So guys are like, I don't want to be that because I didn't like seeing my mother treated that way by my father. I didn't like the neglect I received from my father, but I try to be anything but that, and I'm not meeting expectations. What the fuck? What the fuck is right? The answer is not what you will get on dating sites. It is not what you will get on dating coaches because that is about getting you matches. And the advice they're giving you for that is tailored to that purpose. It's not wrong for that purpose, but if you want a basic Becky, that's the way to go about it. If you want somebody who's actually going to accept you for you, those women are not on online dating. Where are they? Well, they're still hiding right now. That's the bad news. The good news is the best thing you can do is work on yourself and work on that cognitive empathy, that learning to process your emotions so you don't get as overwhelmed. Cognitive empathy is the part that can be taught, you know, unless you're a sociopath, which, yeah. But the tactics, the techniques to be kinder to yourself, to be more empathetic with yourself. Kindness is a 360 performance review. If you're not being kind to yourself, you can't be kind to others. And that's the thing a lot of people miss. They beat the crap out of themselves and put others before themselves. But that means you're constantly, like all these women, just on the verge of overwhelm. You have to start going, these are my needs. These are how I meet my needs. That is not a nice to have. That is essential. That is adulting. And anything that's left, okay, that's what other people get. And that's what I had to do. And I'm still working on that. But I know how it feels when it's right. So I also know when I'm doing it wrong. And nobody's perfect at this, trust me. When you have a whole lot of empathy, it's really, really hard. Because I am an empathic person, but I come across as an asshole. Here's why. Because I know what that person's going through, and I know that coddling them is not helping them. That doesn't mean you be cruel. Cruelty, wrong. But letting them get away with shit, also wrong. Because accountability and a sense of self-worth and self-esteem are conjoined twins. If people aren't accountable, if people aren't held responsible for anything, they feel worthless. It's a question of getting that balance of accountability and compassion. And boundaries are extremely important for empaths. They're harder for you guys because your inclination is to have looser, porous boundaries. You just want to cling to other people and just, merge with the feelings and the life stream. And I get it. But that's not good for you, and that's not good for the other person. Having those firm boundaries so that you know where the world ends and you begin, so you can share that stuff with people without losing yourself. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. Now, the specifics of that are individualized, and, that's why I do the other stuff I do. So if you want to support this stuff, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. And there's other initiatives in the description box below. Check them out. Got a lot going on. Thanks for watching. Manly Mondays.